The letters left unanswered, a mother's silent love. Margaret Collins had always imagined her later years unfolding gently, like the final pages of a beloved novel, quiet, comforting, and rich with the presence of family. She pictured holidays spent bustling around a cozy kitchen, grandchildren laughing underfoot, and Sunday afternoons where conversation and memories filled the room. Instead, she sat alone at her kitchen table in Ashford, Oregon, stirring a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her home was small but tidy, filled with keepsakes of a life lived fully. Faded photographs lined the mantel. Her wedding day, young Margaret beaming next to Robert in his crisp Navy uniform. David at every age, from a pink-faced newborn to a proud college graduate. The house was warm, welcoming, and painfully silent. Robert had been gone for almost 10 years. His passing had left a void so profound it felt like the world itself had lost its color. At first, Margaret found strength in the routines they had once shared. Morning walks, Sunday church services, tending the little vegetable garden Robert had loved. But routines, she learned, could only shield one from loneliness for so long. Her son David, once the axis around which her world spun, now lived nearly 300 miles away in the crowded streets of Seattle. He had a family of his own, a wife, 2 young children, and a demanding job at a tech firm. Margaret had understood, at first. She had smiled through the missed calls and rain-check visits. Life was busy, she reasoned. Young families needed room to grow. But as the weeks stretched into months and then into years, the distance between them grew into something far greater than mere geography. Margaret continued to send handwritten letters, each one filled with small updates about her life. The rose bush blooming early this year, the neighbor's cat adopting her porch as its second home, the volunteer work she enjoyed at the local library. She carefully chose birthday gifts for her grandchildren, puzzles, books, hand-knit sweaters, stitched lovingly over quiet winter nights. Rarely did a response come. The silence became its own kind of answer. Margaret had spent many evenings sitting by the window. Her knitting needles paused midair as she watched the road in front of her house. Once, long ago, she would have seen David's beat-up Ford truck pulling into the driveway, his arms full of flowers and a sheepish grin on his face. She clung to those memories, the scraped knees he had run to her with as a boy, the late-night talks during his restless teenage years, the proud tears she shed when he graduated college. Those moments seemed like scenes from someone else's life now. The first true crack in her heart appeared on a sunny afternoon in early June. Margaret, feeling a rare burst of courage, had decided to try calling David again. She sat by the phone, rehearsing her greeting to make it sound cheerful, breezy, easy. But the call went straight to voicemail. She left a message, careful not to sound needy. She waited. Days passed with no reply. Then, idly scrolling through Facebook one evening, a platform she had only reluctantly joined at the urging of Mrs. Turner across the street, she saw it. Photos of David at a lavish backyard party. His wife, radiant in a sundress. Their children, faces painted, chasing after balloons. Friends surrounded them, laughter frozen in the snapshots. And there, in the middle, David himself, grinning widely, holding a beer aloft in a cheerful toast. No mention of Margaret. No thought of the woman sitting alone, miles away, clutching her phone in hope. Her chest tightened painfully. She closed the laptop slowly, pressing her hand over her heart as if to shield it. The realization washed over her with the slow, cruel certainty of a rising tide. She was no longer a central figure in her son's life. Perhaps she had become an afterthought, a pleasant but inconvenient relic of his past. Still, Margaret refused to let bitterness consume her. She had seen too many people, friends from church, neighbors, shrivel into angry, resentful shells when faced with neglect. That would not be her path. She chose instead to nurture gratitude for the years they had shared and to seek comfort elsewhere. One unexpected source of comfort was Luke Harrison. Luke had first entered Margaret's life 20 years earlier, when he was a nervous young nursing student doing rotations at St. Mary's Hospital. Margaret, then a seasoned senior nurse, had taken an immediate liking to the earnest, wide-eyed boy who seemed terrified of everything from drawing blood to delivering bad news. She remembered his first day vividly, standing awkwardly in the break room, fidgeting with his ID badge, looking utterly lost. She had taken him under her wing, guiding him with the same gentle firmness she once reserved for David. Over the years, even after she retired, Luke had kept in touch. At first, it had been holiday cards, a few sporadic calls. But after Robert's death, something shifted. Luke had sensed Margaret's loneliness, perhaps because he knew what it looked like. He had grown up without a stable family of his own. Visits that started out of duty quickly blossomed into something deeper. Luke would show up unannounced with a six-pack of root beer and a deck of cards, challenging Margaret to raucous games of gin rummy. He mowed her lawn without being asked. He fixed the stubborn back gate. He listened patiently as she told and retold old stories. Over time, Luke had become a fixture in Margaret's life, a lifeline she hadn't even realized she needed. She often found herself thinking, with a bittersweet smile, that family wasn't always about blood. Sometimes, it was about who chose to stay. One gray November afternoon, as the rain tapped softly against her window, Margaret sat at her desk, with a worn leather folder open before her. Inside were all the important documents: her birth certificate, the deed to the house, her modest pension paperwork, and her bank statements. She thumbed through the savings account records. Over the years, she and Robert had lived simply, saving what they could. After Robert's passing, Margaret had continued the habit, rarely spending on anything frivolous. She had always imagined leaving everything to David, a final, silent act of love. But now, looking at the neat rows of numbers, she hesitated. What was the point of bestowing her life savings on someone who couldn't even find the time to return her calls? Who posted photos of birthdays and holidays she hadn't been invited to? Her chest ached with the weight of the decision before her.